The objective of ecological restoration is to re-establish self-sustaining populations, assemblages, and communities. This is reliant not only on practical on-ground planting practices, not only on understanding seed viability and seed collection, but also on evolutionary information. We need to understand provenances, we need to understand genetic diversity, and we need to understand how this evolutionary potential will respond to change in environmental conditions. In the past, it has been particularly difficult to obtain this information. However, recent technological changes are making genetic, evolutionary, and ecological environmental information increasingly accessible. The objective of Restore and Renew New South Wales is to provide an easily accessible source of evolutionary, functional, environmental, and ecological information that will facilitate decision making during ecological restoration projects in New South Wales. All this information on genetic diversity, genetic provenances, seed viability, seed germination, seed storage, habitat suitability, and habitat change will be made available through a website that will be accessible to end users. Let me illustrate this through a pilot study that we're currently completing. This is a common species from the Sydney sandstone region, and what we have here is its current distribution. We know that this species has three slightly differentiated forms. These forms are different in morphology and have what we think slightly different habitat preferences. We can use environmental model to identify a correspondence between morphological changes and habitat preferences. So we do have a coastal group, we have an upland group, and we have a southern group. We also did extensive genetic studies to show that these three morphologically and environmentally differentiated groups also correspond to three genetically differentiated provenances. And this is depicting the distributions of those provenances and of those morphological and ecological groups. So there is good alignment between these three different sources of information. That can be already used directly to source material for restoration. We know that we need to keep those three apart if we want to restore them within those areas. When we look at future models, climate models, and this is a 2050 model, we can see that the habitat suitability for the coastal population will move upland. The habitat suitability for the southern population will pretty much disappear. There are just a few red dots there. And the habitat suitability for the upland population will move south. Now this is just a preliminary prediction, but we can see how the overlap between in same color here, the overlap between current and future habitat will change dramatically. And this, of course, also has consequences in a loss of potential loss of genetic diversity. This is preliminary data from this pilot project on this particular species, but if funded, the objective will be to obtain the exact same amount of information for over 200 species, and to then display all that information on the website in a much more accessible way. What we need now is to develop links with the end users, identify what are the species of interest, and then gather momentum to obtain the funding necessary to bring this project ahead.